Good evening. Welcome to another edition of Rugby Deconstructed. With me tonight, I've got Richard and Angus from Cape Town. We will be discussing Varsity Cup. Both the chaps that I have on the line with me this evening are fundies of the game, specifically Varsity Cup, and they hopefully will be able to enlighten us with a whole bunch of knowledge about the Varsity Cup game. First of all, Angus, how are you doing? And welcome to your first visit to the show.
Hi, Andre. Thanks a lot for having me. It's good to be here.
Okay, Richard.
How's it, Andre? Good to be back.
Yeah. I hear Snoopy's stressing a little bit there, being locked up.
Yeah, you know what? I think the thunderstorms we had yesterday in Gauteng got to the dogs a bit.
Yeah.
I think everybody's chill. I think getting into new hobbies. Been doing a few online quizzes, sports quizzes the last week, and decided to try a few myself or to construct a few myself. So we're still keeping busy on this side. 2 more weeks and we're done with it.
Yeah, let's hope so. All right,
Yes.
Varsity Cup. Angus, give us a little bit of brief history there from, because I know you're an avid follower there and a big Marty supporter. So if you can give us just a little rundown of Varsity Cup, how did it come about? Why do you support Marty's, and a little bit of a history of the tournament?
Basically, as far as I know, Francois Pina, the founder, when the competition, students can participate in the competition and still be full-time students as well. Basically, they have to, I think, have a 60% pass mark or 50% pass mark in order to participate. So practically, if you don't do well in academics, you can't play for your team, your varsity team. So yeah, it's a good thing. So it kind of preps, students for the future. So they don't actually solely focus on rugby itself. Founded in 2008. My boys, the Martys, won it in 08, 09, 2010. Went through 8-year drought, obviously, and then won it in 2018 again. Yeah, it's a pretty good competition, I feel. Just for development, obviously, and just giving maybe the late bloomer a bit of an opportunity to maybe make a step up. Some guys that have been, for instance, Craig Barry is a good example, who has been a junior at Western Province, and apparently the next big thing when he was a lighty, and then he sort of lost his way and got injured, and just before the junior, I think it was in 2012, the Junior World Cup, yeah, and then he got replaced by Darren Lates. So he kind of lost his way in the rugby world and been in the wilderness for a while, and then Varsity Cup gave him a lifeline, and that's he's back at the Cheetahs now, playing professional rugby again. So it's a good thing for like I said, the late bloomer or someone who wants to make a sort of a comeback. So yeah, that's pretty much my view on it.
Yeah. Richard, you want to add something there as part of the introduction?
Yeah, so I mean, I think I was in a very fortunate position that my first day as a first year going to class at Stellenbosch was also the first games being played in the Varsity Cup the same day. I still remember good, 4th of February 2008, and Marty's and Tuks played the opening game at Donny Craven. Actually, interestingly enough, that the Varsity Cup also, as what Super Rugby had a precursor, the Super 10, it had a precursor competition as well called the F&B Super Bowl that was played at one ground every year as a round robin competition with a knockout and a final for a few years building up. At that stage, it was about 4 universities, I think 5 at one point that competed in that, and Varsity Cup extended it up to the 8-team format, round robin in 2008 into the competition we have today.
All right. Progressing with what we're going to discuss tonight. So the first thing I want to discuss in the early stages of the competition, they played normal rules. The rules have changed for Varsity Cup over the years, and it's a bit of a two-part question that I'm posing to the two of you. The first part is the eligibility of the learners, where it was pretty much players in the system in those original first few years. before they brought in some regulations regarding the players, as Angus pointed out earlier. And then the second thing is the trialing of different laws and the 10-point try and the manipulation of points depending where you started you started the move from. So what I want to know is, are you in favor of these regulations and law changes that they've brought to the game? And how do you think it's impacted the development of the player, and how has it impacted the view of the non-student who wants to sit down on a Monday night and watch some rugby? Angus, I'll start with you.
Well, they actually had a 9-point try and the 7-pointer. The 7-pointer still applies, not a 10-pointer, as you've mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I'm not too much in favor of it, to be honest. I mean, I'm a bit old school, traditional, and it's probably good to have innovations. And the whole concept of a 7-pointer or 9-pointer was to encourage running rugby, which I have no obligation with, obviously. But in saying that, you kind of create this false sense of what rugby should be about when you go professional. And I know it's about the entertainment. Students, they don't want to see a kicking contest like a World Cup thing where the scrum of ball kicks every third round or anything like that. So I get the entertainment part of it, but overall, I don't feel it's a good thing to have these innovations. Some of them were actually good, like the white card rule they had. We had the captain who can contest the referee's decision by saying, listen, we feel there was an obstruction in the lead up to that try, or there was a knock on, or anything like that. And we have seen a lot of positive results, coming forward from those contests that the captains could add. But for the there was the one law as well, I think, where it was the free catch rule, where you can catch anywhere on the field from a kick and call a mark, RGC 22. So that basically, I'm not too much in favor of that as well. But the 9-pointer, yeah, I do remember that the 9-pointer was only in 2018, where we scored from your own 22. The try originated from there, and the 7-pointer was from your own half. Yeah, from your own half, and then obviously a normal 5-pointer was from the opposition half. But yeah, not all in favor of it. And as a spectacle, it's great, I think. But also if you get a team that basically wants to have a comeback and they're 7 points up, they think it's over 5 minutes to go, then someone comes and scores a try and takes the game away from them. It's kind of unfair as well, but I guess it's just part of the game, eh?
Yeah. And Richard, yourself on these views, I know regarding the try scoring or the points for a try sometimes creates a bit of a worry or creates a bit of confusion, as happened in one of the games this year.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think I mentioned it as well. Is that I think for me personally, I think the Varsity Cup is it's been a great product, and Francois Pienaar has brought in a lot of innovation at this when they started it off, making it a spectacle at the stadium as well. And I think sometimes they've pushed the boundaries too far to try and remain innovative just for the sake of innovation. When if something's broke, you don't have to always fix it. As you've mentioned now. So yeah, earlier this year there was one game, I know, UJ and Shimlas, where also as Angus pointed out, a point of origin try where it actually created confusion, where UJ was awarded the win after the game, but then going back on TV footage, the game was the following day actually awarded to Shimlas as the point of origin try was not scored from where it was initially judged for. So I mean that creates a situation where a day after the game a score gets adjusted or reversed. I mean it just doesn't leave a good taste in your mouth in that. So hopefully the Varsity Cup learned a lesson with that this year, and will revert back to a normal point scoring system in the future, because I think sometimes, as you say, innovation for the sake of innovation and creating a false sense of security for a player that makes the step up to a professional stage from the Varsity Cup, it's going to just create more problems than create a spectacle going forward in the future.
Yeah. And the second part of the question there was the eligibility of players. You know, we know in the earlier years a lot of the guys who went on to become Springboks were already in the system. You know, I know Jean de Jong comes to mind, and a few other players from that 2000 and was it 2008 side. You know, they really went on to do well in rugby. So
Yeah.
I don't know how you feel, Angus, with the change. Is that was that for the better of the game, that the players in the provincial structure are now basically excluded, and if they're not a full-time student, and all the regulations that go with that. Hello, Angus. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah,
Okay,
sorry,
no problem.
I was breaking up a bit.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to know, do you, regarding the players and their eligibility, players that you think that have really come through the system, that weren't part of the system and are now, you know, getting an opportunity to play Currie Cup and Super Rugby. And I'm not talking about the 2008 class. I'm talking more of your 2017-18 class, where the regulations were more stricter against who was being selected.
I think I got what you were saying. Yeah. So, yeah, like you mentioned, our guys like Sean de Jong was in the system. Obviously, became a Springbok, the first guy to do so. But also the guys that have just come from nowhere. One good example is Apiwe Dianti. He went from literally nowhere, played a bit of rugby at school, and wanted to leave it at one stage, played for UJ at outside centre. I remember the games against Marty, so I used to always think, damn, this boy's going to cause trouble again today. But in saying that, you know, that was one good example of a guy that wasn't in a provincial structure, as a lot of the guys that play now are. So, yeah, for some guys, it does create opportunity. Apiwe is a good example. He became a Springbok. Obviously, there's a controversy now around his substance use, apparent substance use, but apart from that, you know, there are obviously guys that will come from nowhere and actually make it. So it's still good to have that sort of blend of some guys in the provincial system, and we still have Edo Verve, who's like a multi-year in the Stormers, played a couple of games for them, and Duncan Saul, his other wing partner at the Cheetahs now. So yeah, the guys do tend to get out of out of the Varsity Cup and, you know, make a good name for themselves. You know, some play Currie Cup, some play First Division, some don't make it at all, but at least, you know, they gave it a shot. And I guess it probably won't work for everyone, but at least there's opportunity created for some guys. So I feel that's the positive about it.
Yeah, Richard, you got anything to add there?
Yeah, I mean, I still remember back in my days at Stellenbosch, the Marty's third team was literally the Western Province Rugby Institute that played. The guys in that setup were playing as the Marty's third team on a normal club weekend. This was as late as 2011, and I mean, if you look at even the Blue Bulls team, saying Blue Bulls, but the Tuks team of 2013 was made up of almost primarily guys contracted to the Blue Bulls that weren't actually, as you say, full-time students at Tuks. So the changes were needed in terms of giving guys more opportunities, because it was more at one stage giving game time to guys that were already contracted to the unions. Going forward, with the new contracting model that SA Rugby's been introduced, I think there's a bigger role to play for the Varsity Cup in terms of bringing those of bringing more players through and having that eligibility standards still set, where I think unions can work with the Varsity Cup teams quite closely, not fully involved, but more in a sense of identifying talent that goes through the correct structures, where you've got a guy that's, as you say, that is a student coming through the correct processes, but and can still have as you say, a degree to fall back on when he comes to the end of his professional rugby career at the end of the day. In terms of players, I mean, another good example is Marty's captain. I forgot his name. He played for Province last year. Youth Paul Risboy, but his name's now slipped my mind. I know Angus can help me there. One of the Marty's loose forwards who's
Chris Messane.
No, not Chris Messane. The one loose forward. His name slips my mind. We'll probably get to that at a later stage. So I mean, there's a
This
lot
last
of
year's captain.
sorry.
This last year's captain.
Yeah.
Yeah, last year it was still Chris here.
Oh, was this all Christmas Saint? Okay, I think that's it's probably it. As I said, names slipping my mind. But as you mentioned, there's still a lot of talent coming through the Varsity Cup system, even though it's not the unions having their academy boys playing in the sides anymore, which I think creates a lot more opportunities for players. But then going forward, in terms of as I mentioned earlier, the contracting model that the unions have to adopt, they're going to have to rely on Varsity Cup more going forward. I feel in terms of identifying talent.
All right. Moving on to the next part of the show in Varsity Cup. It's not just 8 teams that take part. They've actually got a Premier and a Second Division, and then they have like a bit of a playoff game for the team that's supposed to be relegated. Angus, I know UCT, a very strong side normally and a past winner. They were sweating 1 year with relegation. Do you think that relegation is needed? What about your smaller universities? They've also got club teams and stuff, and I know some of the teams that have come through have really done well, and others have struggled.
Yeah, actually no problem with the relegation issue, Andre. Practically, if you look at the recent side it entered now, it's UWC. Yeah, they're still finding their feet, but a couple of years ago, Wits entered from the Shield to the Cup, and they made the quarterfinals for the first time in, I think it was last year or the year before. So Wits is on and up. They're mid-table at the moment, if I'm not mistaken. And they've quite built a good squad so far. So there's no issue with teams coming up as well. I know CUT is a prime example. When they came into the competition, I think me and what's the other guy, Reda, we spoke about it yesterday, and said to me that in the quiz that he sent that there was one team that conceded 100 points, and I thought it was CUT. Turns out it was UCT as well. But like I said, when CUT came into the comp, they conceded 80, 90, 100 points per week. And now they also have a decent lock standing at the moment. So yeah, it's always a bad idea for these teams to be relegated. Like Madiba, they had a lot of controversy as well about 2 years ago with student protests and stuff like that. So, and in the end, I was actually happy they got relegated because of all the nonsense they caused for the competition as a whole. I thought to myself, good for you guys. It's good that you guys are out because you caused nonsense in the first place, and now you're actually being relegated, to the lower league, to the Varsity Shield competition. So it's not a bad thing for teams to get relegated and maybe just kind of learn their lesson in some sense, but also it doesn't do well for some players who might have stood out in the competition as well, and maybe now because the team has been relegated, they'd get a tip as well from other unions not looking at them anymore.
Yeah. Richard, yourself?
Yeah, I think one thing that Varsity Cup has got right in this sense is the 2-year structure that they've got. So your average performance over a 2-year season. So on a cycle, then you get promotion and relegation on top of based on those performances, and then so the 9th place team in Varsity Cup goes down, Varsity Shield winner goes up, 8th place plays off against 2nd place in Shield. So I think in terms of there still being a bit of a gap, as Angus pointed out quite nicely, Wits University has closed that gap quite well. I mean, they were in a playoff position now this season before the lockdown. So yeah, in terms of getting it right, I think where to still have some time for development as well, but still giving somebody opportunity. The 2-year average system is working quite nicely at the moment. And as he said, a prime example of giving other universities a chance. I mean, CPUT were only admitted to the competition for the 2017 season. And they ended up actually winning the Shield last year, beating Madibas in the final. So, I mean, somebody that as even in Western Province, they have no rugby blueprint really in the club structures as a university compared to the others, but still they've been given the opportunity and they've shown what they're able to do.
Yeah. So if we look back over the history that we've had now, and unfortunately this year has kind of folded. Are there any? I know the one final was probably which was UCT versus Potch, is probably seen as the best final that we've had. Are there any other classic games that viewers and listeners should know about that they might have missed?
Angus?
I think we've lost him there a bit. Angus, can you hear us now?
Yeah, I can hear you guys now. Yeah, you're breaking up a bit.
Yeah, sorry. I was asking, the question was, any classic games that you, of all the games that you've watched, is there any classic game that sticks out? We all know about the come from behind win by UCT over Potch, but are there any other games that you can remember that are on the classic, can be classified as a classic match?
Yeah, I would actually say the 2016 final, and I was in attendance as well. So practically Marty stopped the lock. You know, they looked unbeatable actually. And I remember just before the match, they played against Spurker, where the match went into the 87th minute, I think. And practically before the match, the fly half at the point in time, I can't get his name now, but he pulled out. So they played with their second choice fly half who had to start because he got injured in the warm up actually. And the match was quite tightly contested. I know it was 6-0 for a long time, and there was a penalty that the fly half actually, a relative easy one, he actually missed, which could have made it 9 points up. The Marty's wing at the point in time, I think his name is Brandon Asherwood. He was on his way to go score, and in the act of scoring, he dropped the ball. And then, obviously, but like, I think there was a small from Shocks. I think it was and I think it was a knock on resulting into a scrum. And it was full time already. So we were all like shouting, yo, Marty's defense. And I think 2 yellow cards later, Martin Redelinghuis, who went on to play again for the Stormers and who's now playing in USA. He went on to go score the winner for for Puka against all odds that no one actually expected them to. I could still remember, like, you could hear a pin drop when that happened, and Rainer Smith kicked the conversion, and at the end Puka won the final. But
yeah, Richard, we've got a bit of
I
a.
feel it was quite classic. Actually, supporting it there. If I watched the match now, I would say that would make up classic. One with the.
All right, sorry, Richard, sorry, Angus, we got a bit of a broken line there. You broke up there right at the end, but we got what you were saying. Richard, is there any one or two games that you can think of that really stuck out?
Well, definitely, in my opinion, the first ever final. To give you a bit of a background there, UCT had topped the log. Marty's had snuck in extra time against Tuks to make the final. But due to the state of the ground at Grooteskier, where no floodlights were available to actually show the final was moved to Donny Craven. But UCT still went into that as the favourites and were actually leading, same going into injury time, where Marty's actually scored the winner to be crowned champions. And they were actually, if you think about the underdogs on that day, and from that final, they went on to win the next two. So I think the first final as well, just in terms of pure tension and excitement around the stadium when they actually put UCT at the end in injured time, also stands out to me as probably one of the great finals for Varsity Cup.
Yeah. Now, I remember that UCT issue. I've played many times on the Green Mile under the floodlights there, and it's on a Friday night when it's wet and rainy. It's not really ideal. Maybe early February when the sun's setting late, you can maybe get away with it. But I do remember being an issue for them. So the final sector of this Varsity Cup chat is looking at players that have come through that have really shone. And I'm thinking if we look at the Rugby World Cup that comes through, one player that's really, he was in the system, but definitely played some Varsity Cup. And if I remember correctly, was a UWC fan favorite, Herschel Yankees, that came through. Angus, I don't know, are there any other players that have really gone on to shine that make you proud and want to say that this is a great product from the Varsity Cup showpiece?
Yeah, I would actually say Damon the Islander. I don't think Damon was in the system at the point in time. He came from Milton High, who isn't actually a renowned rugby playing school.
And we've lost Angus again.
He just played options, identifying players. We got to play for the Stormers and obviously, the Springboks ultimately. So, yeah, I think he was quite key to the Springbok success in the World Cup. As people give him a lot of flack, but people don't always see the work he puts in. So I think that's one big success story that people might overlook, generally spoken.
Yeah. So we got Herschel Yankees, Damon the Islander. Richard, do you want to add any players there? Maybe 2 or 3 extra that we should give recognition to from that varsity system?
Well, if you look at purely from the system, there's 3 names that I would actually point out as guys that really came through the system. Trevor Nyakani actually came through the Shield with CUT back in 2012. That's where he was identified. Another guy, Erge Snyman, actually came through the under-20s, the Varsity Cup Young Guns tournament with Tuks. That's where he got identified through. And Louis de Jager with Pucker. That's how he got identified. So those are 3, if I had to identify purely through the system, those are 3 that you could say was purely came through the system. Somebody that, if you can identify, that really cut his teeth and actually molded himself as a player would be Opa Mahoshi by captaining Shimlas. That would be another prime example of where the system actually worked to a player's favor and not actually just purely there to get game time while already being contracted to a major union.
Yeah, those are some great names that you listed there. Gents, I've held my views back a bit, but I'm going to add some of my thoughts on Varsity Cup. I think the original product that was provided, monopolizing Monday night for Varsity Cup, was a great idea and it's a great concept. And I hope it goes on for many years. I'm really not a fan of the rule changes and the gimmicks that they bring into the game. I do think like the pink shorts is a great concept for man of the match, and the vibe and the support and the side shows for the fans to bring the fans to the game. That's pretty cool, and it creates a great atmosphere for everybody. But when it comes to the game, I think if you want to provide players that are going on to play Super Rugby and hopefully Springboks one day, I think they should be cutting their skills, specifically with the skills that are required to play pro rugby. So the changing of points for the points for tries and other aspects of the game, I think they can maybe be trialed at the Corsace Rugby or the inter hostile games. But when it comes to the big games, let's stick to the traditions, as it'll only benefit the players in the long run, and it'll also help the supporters who aren't necessarily Varsity Cup fans understand what's going. In the modern game today, there's a lot of people who struggle to follow when there's a law change. Now you want that same fan to watch Varsity Cup, where there's probably 3 or 4 different law changes, and that just creates more confusion, and you end up having results changed post-game after review and a protest, and then that kind of just breaks the spirit of the game and why we play it. Any last words from you, Angus?
No, I think we covered basically everything. Just want to comment on the thing about the vibe about Varsity Cup. I think the only cool thing is that actually draws the students is the fact that they play music throughout the whole match itself. So it creates that sort of party sense, it has that sort of sevens vibe to it as well, where you kind of party. Because I've noticed sometimes even Marties will be on the losing side to any other team, and the students will still be singing and dancing. So it's not all too serious. I think that's probably the one positive about it. It's still sport, but it's still there to be enjoyed and not make too much of it. So yeah, that's basically about it. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, I love that point that you made. Back to the essence of fans getting to the game and getting to hang around with mates and have a drink and cheer your team on, win or lose. I really enjoy that point that you brought in. And yourself, Richard?
2 points where I think that's already in the worked into the product, that they can actually further emphasize and actually build a much better product on. Okay, so firstly, off the topic, as you say, going back to the normal point scoring system would be ideal, and dropping a lot of the silly rules, as we said, and playing proper rugby. But the first point is tribalism, where you've got the universities that's all got an identity playing against each other. So you, as a Stellenbosch student, you've got that identity of being a Marty. That's the trial you support. You don't support only a rugby team, you're supporting a university going out. Same if you were in UCT or at Tuks. So that aspect is something that I think they can emphasize more, the tribalism, that's the belonging of being part of something. And because that's what drives a lot of non-rugby fans to the stadiums as students. I mean, I remember back in my days, we had guys that friends of mine that wouldn't even sit through a Springbok test match, go to a Monday night Varsity Cup game just because it's Marty's playing, it's the university. And second point, where I think SA Rugby, in conjunction with the Varsity Cup, can start working on actually also using it more as a tool to identify a lot of good players. It's something that the Major League Rugby has started implementing from next season onward, and that's actually what they're doing, a collegiate draft, where guys that's performing in their college system gets drafted into Major League Rugby. There's no reason why SA Rugby, with the new contracting model, can't have a Varsity Cup draft at the end of the season to identify guys that are now finishing their degrees that actually, you know what, they can still have a professional rugby career for a good 10 years before moving into the corporate world, identifying those guys as part of a Varsity Cup draft into professional rugby. That's just my 2 cents on what I think they can further work on to enhance the product more.
Yeah, I love that. I love that last point of yours with regards to the drafting of players in and spreading the talent around a little bit, especially for some youngster that was totally out, but has now got that opportunity, maybe to get a degree, maybe finish off his honors as he wishes, and then get into a draft system. And he has a lot of time to train and study, and at the end, you're very likely going to have a better product of a person at the end of the line, that once he finishes, he can go into the business world or law world, or how he in the area of expertise that he's qualified in. We know there's a lot of pro rugby players now in England, and that are doctors that are helping out. So getting that tertiary education is quite a priority, and we a lot of players tend to ignore that, especially if they get into the system quite early. And you look at somebody like Hilton Roberts, who's at the end of his career now, who's struggling, and he's just one example of many who at the end of a pro career have got nothing to fall back on. So I think the Varsity Cup is definitely a stepping stone for where we can look at some players going into becoming pros, but at the end of their career, they'll definitely have some sort of exposure and experience and qualification that they can carry on. Thank you, gentlemen. We've come to the end of tonight's episode. I really appreciate you guys taking your time to join me and to discuss Varsity Cup.
Sweet. Thanks, Andre.
Oh, thanks, Andre. It's good to be here.